How's everyone feeling this morning? Any yeehaws from the rodeo or anything? Good. All right. I love it. I love it. All right. I know it's been a long and fun, and after last night, probably tiring week. But we've got one last, I hope, really great panel for all of you. It'll be an industry panel. And in just a moment, I'll invite the panelists up. And we're doing a cool thing this year. We're going to be live streaming this as well on LinkedIn, which is great. I know we've gotten a bunch of good feedback that people who couldn't come or other parts of teams are going to be able to join live. We'll be taking live questions both in the audience and from the live stream. So that'll be great. Really looking forward to it. So if I can go ahead and have my panelists join me up on stage. Mark, Melissa, Tom, come on up. So in just a minute, I'll ask everyone to introduce themselves and kind of give some background. But to level set, what we'd like to do during this session is we've got a couple questions that we think are kind of good state of the industry questions that aren't all technology related, aren't just community management related, but things like legislation and big trends and things we're seeing all across the country. And I'll let these great folks tell you how they have this perspective, how they spend their time. So we've got some really great perspectives here. And then I really do encourage, if you've got questions that you'd love to kind of pose to this group and to the whole rest of the audience, please come up. Toward the end, we'll ask people to come up, and we've got mics here. We'll take those questions. And for everyone who's joining us through the live stream, we appreciate it. You'll be able to submit questions right in the chat as well, and those will be populated up here, and we'll try to take some of those as well. So I'll maybe go down the line. Mark, start with you. If you can just introduce yourself, tell us what you do, maybe how you spend your time in this industry, how long you've been in this industry, and something that you love about it or love to hate about it, or something in between.
Okay, I can do that. I can do all of those things. Good morning. It's good to be here with you, and thank you, Ben, for the invite. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Mark Anderson. I am honored to be here on behalf of our Chief Executive Officers of Management Companies, which is the industry trade group for our community association managers in the state of Florida. Been doing that for a number of years now. We started out with a very small number of probably 6 or 7 companies not that long ago, and we're now north of 60 companies representing roughly 14,000 community associations across the state, which is a footprint of now 6.5 million Florida homeowners who live in communities managed by the companies that I'm here today representing. I'm also been in the advocacy space. Separate from that, I have my lobby firm in Tallahassee, Florida, where we represent clients before the state and federal government, doing work for them to manage the risk of government, which is often a big deal, and we've seen some of that this play out in the closure of our federal government and what that can look like. So we're very busy, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome, thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Melissa.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Melissa Ramsey, and most people know me this year as CAI's president of the Board of Trustees. And so that has been quite the experience this year. We have a new CEO, in case you didn't hear about that, for an organization, but that has kept us busy as we really look to launch the new campaign of We Love where you live, love where you work, love where you serve, because this industry is fascinating, and if we continue to connect with one another, then we're going to continue to succeed. So that's my volunteer aspect, but professionally, I have my own consulting company, so I support management companies and boards behind the scenes. I decided I didn't want to deal with homeowners anymore. Love them.
Why?
But I am one. But I just needed to do things that fill your cup. So I've been in the industry 20 years now. So
well, and for everyone, I think a lot of us know this about you. But what did you do before consulting?
Was in management, on the management space. On-site portfolio leadership positions starting in Nevada and to the Carolinas. So the y'alls might come out in a little bit.
We're okay with y'alls. We're in Texas. Awesome. Tom.
Well, yeehaw, when in Texas. Thank you very much, Ben, for allowing me to be here today. You put on an amazing event. Last night's rodeo, for everybody who was there, outstanding. My name is Tom Freely. I'm the CEO for the California Association of Community Managers. Our advocacy is very exclusive to managers and management companies similar to Mark. Thank you and hello to my team watching today. I'm very fortunate to have a well-rounded career in management. I've been in it roughly 40 years or 20 million minutes, but I'm not counting. I've managed luxury high-rise buildings from Manhattan, New York to Washington, D.C. and San Diego and Orange County. I've managed mega-large homeowner associations. I've owned a management company, and I've held executive leadership positions in other management companies around the country. So I've been in it for a couple of minutes, or 20 million.
Just a few.
Or 20 million. And what we learned last night is also you're a sneaky good line dancer.
I am so sorry for those of you who had to watch that.
Awesome. Well, let's jump in. And this is maybe a weird question, not to get make us all nervous to start, but I think that the last couple of days have been really energizing. We've been talking about all the good things and all the positive change that's happening and everything that's possible. But I kind of wanted to ask this group, especially representing places like Florida, which deals with a lot of legislation and challenging things and a lot of complicated stuff in California as well. And Melissa, you've got a really broad perspective. I want to ask all three of you, and you can go in any order, what's the one thing kind of keeping you up at night or at least giving you bad dreams for our industry right now? And whoever wants to start.
Well, I'll start, I guess. There's a lot there, Ben. Keeps me up at night. I think I would come at it from two different directions. One would be as an advocate, and then another dimension would be on behalf of the CEOs that I am honored to work with and what keeps them up at night. As an advocate, I would say that what keeps me up at night and has increasingly done so in the last couple of years has been the potential over-regulation of our community associations in Florida, and what that means for the communities that we manage across the state, and what it may mean also for other states who look to Florida as a bellwether for how to deal with community association issues. I think that we see far too much coming out of the self-managed communities who are trying to navigate an increasingly complex landscape of rules and regulations, don't know what they're doing. And then you have some community associations that intentionally do so as a way of violating the law. In either case, nothing good happens, and the good actor management companies and the communities they manage are impacted and in some cases impaired by the inability to do their job. On behalf of our CEOs, I would say what keeps them up at night is a number of things, some of which I just shared. I would say the jobs pipeline is a big one for them. Attracting and keeping talented professionals who can creatively think and problem solve is a big thing. The erosion of our profit margins is another one. I think the cost of doing business in Florida, as well as the compliance cost, the downward pressure of compliance costs about those regulations I'm talking about is outpacing the ability of management fees to cover those costs as well. So, and I would say lastly, obviously we're going to talk about this, but how can our companies integrate AI into their daily work and their business? How can they make it profitable? Some of our companies are doing it very well. Some of them are not really sure, and others are just kind of waiting to see what happens. So I think there's a lot there that our CEOs are looking at that keep them up at night. So that's kind of a long answer, but coming at it from two different directions.
You said something. I'm going to take us on a bit of maybe a rabbit hole, but you said something that got my attention, which was kind of the over-regulation or regulation specific to Florida. Kind of in the room, just a quick show of hands, how many folks manage communities in multiple states? Is dealing with differing regulations in different states becoming harder and harder? Yes, I'm seeing a lot of heads nod. So, something that I'm curious, I've been thinking a lot about and paying attention, not even necessarily for the regulation of community management, but the regulation of things like AI is what's happening at the state level. There's all sorts of laws that are and legislations being proposed for certain states of what models can do and can't do. So there's this big question in AI right now about should there be some sort of federal preemption to give kind of a national, maybe light, but a framework that prevents this kind of patchwork of of sometimes overreaching but complicated and cumbersome and sometimes conflicting legislation. I'm just curious if you guys are seeing that as well, of not just over-regulation or burdensome kind of compliance at a state-by-state basis, but things that make it hard to operate across states and anything there. Maybe Tom, I know.
Well, I think that general mass media has created AI to be a super bad kind of a concept. They're afraid of it. They've caused people to be very afraid of it. And I think that from an industry-specific standpoint, I think we need to embrace it. I think that using your systems as an example, I think your systems are so far advanced specific to our industry that I think, and I've watched all of your presentations, that the system can be used in multiple different industries in the coming years. And I think if we can change the persona that AI is negative, it's going to impact people. There's no way around that. But I think it's the concern that people have is based off of lack of knowledge of AI. And for those of you out here who have watched all the Vantaca systems, should understand and appreciate that it's not a bad thing. Yes, it's bad if it's being used from a negative purpose, where I'm going to be on some random social media saying things that I shouldn't say that I didn't. And that concept is a concern to the general public. But specific to our industry, embrace it, because I think it is coming regardless. Well, technically it's here regardless. But I think that the more we embrace it, the more we'll be able to work with it, the more we'll understand it, and the less concerned we will be by it.
So Tom, but let's zoom out. Like even beyond just AI, I'm even thinking legislation specific to the compliance of managing communities. And I think we get to see and support groups like Mark leads and help with a lot of state level stuff, but maybe Melissa, I know you have a perspective on what is the federal opportunity, or is there
So
one?
I don't know if anyone was in the room, was in Washington, D.C. last week. So we had the Advocacy Summit, and from a legislative perspective, really looking at the affordability of housing and the ability for people to actually buy a home and be in these communities is a concern. And so great, all these things are happening at the state level, but from a federal perspective, if people can't enjoy the benefits of having a home and having that lifestyle that they're looking for, what are we going to do? And so making sure that we're all aware of that and we're all supporting the policies that are in place to support that, and then take it down a notch to the state level. I still hold my Nevada license, heavily regulated, overly regulated, and some of the things that come up, you look at it and you're like, someone's listening to one person who's upset and mad, and they've put in a 5-page state statute that does no good. And then you go to South Carolina and it's the Wild Wild West and there's no legislation. And so it's, you look at it and that makes it hard from an industry perspective, because how do you bring people in when they hear the horror stories of the heavily regulated states versus the ones where I can do whatever we want? And so, that makes it a little challenging as an industry to say, we want you to come join us. We want you to be a part of what it is that we're offering. It is truly a profession, but stay out of this state. Or,
right.
Maybe you don't want to go over there. So it's a challenge, but I think we all need to be aware of it and continue to support the good of the industry and the good of the communities that we're serving.
So from a legislative perspective, California is not very focused on AI specific to our industry, at least, but we are a very heavy regulated state. And there were 8 states in the entire United States that have licensing or some sort of formal regulation. Colorado is one of them. They repealed their legislation. So we're down to 7 states in the United States that have formalized regulation. And that's going to grow. California is looking at it. Needless to say, for those managers and management companies in California, we're fighting that. But I don't think I'm aware of very many people in California that's afraid of regulation. We're afraid of where that regulation is supposed to report to. And so we're working through the legislature to try to find that commonality where we can improve the industry through regulation, or we can help validate, for lack of a better way of putting it, our industry through legislation. But it's a very long way. It's a long game, and it always has been. CACM was developed and formed in 1991 for the specific purpose of self-regulating our industry in California, and we've been successful ever since then. But again, it's a very regulated state, so it's a constant battle in California.
I think artificial intelligence is going to be something. I think we're kind of in the pre-dawn era at the moment with respect to how and what regulation is going to look like. I think it's going to be largely up to the industry to shape and to form what AI is going to look like for them. And if there are gaps in the marketplace or there are concerns, it is going to be on us to bring those to the attention of our lawmakers. I think that, as with anything, they are reactive to problems, and I think that as much as we can stay ahead of that curve and identify some of those challenges and bring those to the attention of our lawmakers, I think that is going to be something that will be a value added, but something that they will rely on us to do. If you put politicians in a room without the benefit of information, they will make the wrong decision almost every time, if not every time. So I think that it's going to be on us to inform and to really inform our view of how we're deploying it in our markets. I would just also say, in terms of the compliance, and I mean the regulation, we saw what, kind of tying back to what keeps me up at night. I don't want to keep coming back to that. There's a lot, and one of probably the best illustration of the overregulation, and this could be very well related to AI, Ben, is the idea that if you don't deal with these problems, they're going to find their way into not only bad media stories, but really bad legislation. I hear you on that. You're not wrong. We have a lawmaker in Florida who has decided that he wanted to opine publicly, very publicly, that he thought HOAs should go away and be banned. Now, you may think that is an absolutely absurd thing, and it is. It does not come from an absurd place. These communities have a branding problem. They have a problem. Even the ones who are managed, these are communities that frankly are just, we're not doing, I think, a well enough job of making sure that they're living up to their potential. People choose to live in a community for a whole variety of reasons in Florida, because they love the quality of life and the cost of living that they're getting. That message isn't getting out enough. And so I fear that that kind of thing is going to start manifesting itself more and more lawmakers than just him feel that way.
Let's dig in on that. I think it's an interesting topic, and I've heard versions of this conversation a lot over the years, and it doesn't seem like we've ever collectively, or even maybe individually, really figured out how to crack that nut. But whether it's a branding problem and a visibility problem, or just the assumptions of HOAs, the assumptions of community association living and management, what are some of those things that we think we should all work to change, or opportunities?
I think this is a customer service-based industry, and we lose sight of that sometimes and look at it as we have set tasks. And that's where AI comes in and is helping to facilitate the task, which puts more emphasis on the fact that we're delivering customer service. So how are we doing that and excelling at that, and then highlighting and promoting the good stories? When you constantly hear, the horror stories of the communities that sent the wrong letter, or, this year my favorite was the violation that went out because someone put sidewalk chalk out. And what kid doesn't have sidewalk chalk? I mean, why are we talking about that in the media? So we need to start talking about all of the good things, the happy people that are living in the communities, the managers that have done something really well and connected with their homeowners, or a well-run annual meeting. Like, we're not putting that out there to make sure that people go, wait a minute, these aren't the evil HOAs full of Karens. Like, it's, like, this is a great place. We're happy. And if more people hear the happiness, there's less of a need and demand to legislate it. And I think that's something that, as leaders, all of us need to make sure that we're promoting that positivity.
You said, go ahead, Tom. If I may, you said it really well. The perception is reality, unfortunately. And the perception of the industry, you look at the John Oliver. Has anybody seen the John Oliver clip from about a year ago? Good. Don't bother. John Oliver's a very good comedian, in my opinion, but he had an extremely negative clip about our industry, and to a point where I was ready to start going out into the mass media and debating it. Thankfully, I thought twice about that. But that perception, from a media perspective, we as an industry need to help the media understand that our industry has a very good, positive tone to it. People live in homeowner associations for a purpose, for a reason. Homeowner associations are there for a purpose and a reason. So there's not enough of that out into the mass media, and you said it really well. That's where we need to start making change as far as the perception is concerned.
I think at the most basic level, something we've been talking a lot with a handful of our customers who are really leaned in to using tools like AI, but not using them just to deliver more efficiency, but using them to get leverage to go deliver greater and greater experiences. And I think it comes down to some version of taking the perception of living in an HOA being about all the things you can't do. Hey, welcome to the HOA. You can't paint your door this color. Welcome to the HOA. You can't leave your trash out past this time. Welcome to the HOA. No sidewalk chalk. To use it, whatever the thing is. Instead of welcome to the community. Here are all the benefits of being together. Here's all the benefits of being with people who share probably some values and share a lot of things that you have in common. So I think the more that we can start to highlight, here are all the benefits of community. I think that's the beginning of this big snowball of community rather than restriction. Any thoughts on that?
And if you share communication proactively, so in the South, May is landscape season. So if you're not in March and April prepping your owners to say, hey, maybe you should hire a landscaper, make sure you prune the shrubs. Sharing that proactively and making sure people understand, hey, this is coming up. They're not going to get caught off guard. They're not going to get the nasty gram where then instantly they hate the association and they're bored. And so that's where, if AI is taking some of the tedious tasks off of the plate and it's being done more efficiently, the manager then can look at, here's all of the things that are happening on an annual basis in these communities, and let's talk about it in advance. And that way owners feel like they're part of the solution and not defending themselves for something that's silly in some cases.
And I'll highlight, I know some of you have heard this before, but something I think I heard this conversation at the ACAM CEO event earlier this year. Some folks were sharing how can we as management company leaders help facilitate that mindset. And hey, if you're going through the neighborhood and working on compliance and taking pictures of all the things that are wrong, also highlight the things that are great. Hey, let's send you a reward, or highlight, hey, this was the best looking yard we found, and let's celebrate that and make that equally part of the mission.
And publicize it.
Exactly right. The media part matters. Yes, exactly right. Any thoughts on that, Mark? Yeah. Mark's still having nightmares about overreaching regulation.
Yeah, I could talk a lot about
Mark's I'm in Florida.
I'm from Florida. I don't need to say anything else. Florida speaks for itself, does it not?
Well, as we do look forward to that, and I had a question here, and I think it's particularly cool. We've seen a couple times, we've got a family in the second row here of truly the next generation of folks that are going to be leading a management company, which I think is so cool that you guys have been here all week and taking notes. So as we think about this next generation, literally this next generation of community management leaders, management company operators and leaders, what do you think this next generation needs to be doing now? How can we be proactively thinking about not only kind of the perception issue, but really future-proofing our businesses and this industry?
I'll start off. I think building, investing in your culture. I think we could talk a lot about AI, and I think it can replace. It doesn't have to replace people, but it must replace inefficiency. And the savings from that inefficiency really needs to be reinvested into the people and the culture of these companies, which is what makes these companies great, what stands out, what allows our management companies to stand separate and apart from everyone else. I think culture is a huge thing that is going to be a challenge, because as AI begins to come more into taking some of those transactional aspects away from, or better handling some of those, it's going to put management companies under the microscope of how do you handle and navigate people who live in these communities. I mean, our mission in management is to manage the most significant investment somebody will ever make in their life, and that's the purchase of a home. And we protect that quality of life and that cost of living, and we provide a meaningful way of doing that. And we saw that play out probably even better, no better example than COVID, when we saw just how relevant managers were to the daily lives of the people who live in these communities. So I think it's important that we invest in culture and realize that you're not going to be able to outsource it all to AI, much as I think that next generation is going to be looking to and probably very well equipped to handle that. This is still a very big people business. And the last thing I would just say is that I think it would be great, if I had a wish list, and I would say that, is that we would have that we'd embark on partnerships with our higher education, our colleges and universities to create pathways for mentorship and career pathways into this profession that will really start early, because we're already training our students with AI literacy in high school and in elementary school. I think a great way to begin this conversation is to really grow that jobs pipeline I spoke about earlier by making sure that we provide for that. And I think that'd be a great way to do that. I think Nova Southeastern actually has a program like this in South Florida, which is a great thing. We need more of that to let people know this is an honorable profession worthy of the investment of your time in your life.
And we are seeing more colleges and universities starting to incorporate courses into the curriculum, especially if they have a hospitality program. So figuring out ways to make it a profession and not just I responded to an ad in the newspaper, didn't know what I was getting into, and here I am as a community manager. I've heard that so many times, versus how cool would it be for someone to say, I went to school and my degree is in community management, and I want to make this a profession, and I'm in it for the long haul. And so making that shift and putting that investment in it from a professional standpoint is going to be the way we keep bringing people in to be able to be successful.
So how many people, by show of hands, intentionally got into this industry? 1, 2,
There's a
3,
few.
4, couple. Good, thank you very much. Appreciate that. The majority of the people fell into this industry, as you saw, tripped in it one way or another. And I think Mark said it earlier that the pipeline is a problem in our industry. Future generations have an advantage, in my opinion. I remember, this is how old I am, I remember walking around Manhattan, New York with a big suitcase on my side with a phone up to my ear, thinking I was the hottest thing in the world. Technology has advanced so far since then that at least for me, I'm learning it on a I'm not sure I can keep up with it. It's changing so fast. The younger generation has already embraced it, and they're involved in that learning curve from the start. And as far as future managers and future management companies, what that looks like, embrace it. Even I'm embracing it. We're looking at it for my organization. I can only say embrace it, because that's going to change the industry. As Mark said, some jobs might go, but it's streamlining the process. And because we are a customer service industry, AI, don't be afraid of it, because it's not going to change our industry. We are a handshake industry. We are a relationship building industry. You guys, managers, your personality managers, your psychiatrists, you're all these things that go into managing personalities. Embrace that, because that's what's going to continue. The AI is not going to be able to replace that in any way.
One thing just to add to that is I think we all need to be mindful of the health and wellness of our managers, though.
Very well said.
And technology has put it to where we are 24/7. And so we need to make sure that we promote the work-life balance, and so that way people don't feel like they're always on.
Yep.
They need to be able to take the time off, enjoy the vacations, do the things with their kids, and not constantly like, I got to respond to this email. Don't respond to an email at 2 o'clock in the morning. You're setting that expectation up. And so I think reinforcing that piece is going to be critical as to where people want to stay if they feel supported.
So I'm sure a lot of the executives in the room might appreciate the fact that our brains don't necessarily turn off So I'm going to remind my team that's watching today, please don't follow me by example, because I am one of those guys who will send emails at random times of day and night. But I agree, the office culture needs to be that, from a leadership perspective, as executives in the room, have empathy to your team. Show that empathy. Be vulnerable to your team. Because the more reality that we put into our industry, the more people will start to appreciate the industry more.
Yep.
One thing that was kind of hit on in the middle of that is, as we were talking about how the future will change and how much we will be able to ride this wave of continued, technology innovation, continued things like AI. And as we think about that, I want to paint two very different futures and just get everyone to kind of react and maybe disagree with it. I don't know. But I think if we zoom forward 5 years, certainly 10 years, I think what we're all seeing today is that it could be as low as 30 or 40% or as much as 80% of kind of how we spend our time in community management. We'll be able to delegate that to automation or AI. And I think there's a really bad version of that future, which is, hey, we deliver the exact same service we've always done, but we need way less people to do it, and it's a race to the bottom on pricing, and we can do it cheaper and cheaper, so let's keep undercutting each other. I actually think that's bad for our businesses here. I think that's bad for the GDP of community management. And I also think it's bad for communities. I think there's actually an appetite for a level of service that is several times more than what is being delivered today. And so the good version of the future that I hope we're all charging to, and I'm curious to get your take on this, is every time we're able to unlock more and more efficiency, we can reinvest in greater service and reinvest in more time and better handshakes and better experiences and kind of lean into truly curating a great community experience. And I think the appetite, at least what we've seen and what the data appears to be showing, is the appetite is there for several times more for communities themselves, for a better community experience. So that's the version of the future that I'm choosing to believe in and hoping comes true, but I'm curious what you guys think.
I would agree. I mean, I prefer that version as well. But you had companies that were well advanced of the curve before COVID that were already moving towards a virtual capacity, building their systems virtually, putting in AI concepts long before COVID. And then COVID came, and what did that teach us? Oh, we can work remote. Oh my God, no more brick and mortar expenses, so on and so on. Of course, there are still people they have to remind you're still on Zoom or you're still on mute, but that's a different discussion. The industry has changed so much just in the last few years that it's going to continue in that progress where a lot of it is going to be automated, but it doesn't, and in my opinion, will never replace the concept of in-person relationship building of your clients and your homeowners and your clients.
And lifestyle is such a huge component of communities now. And so it's not just, remowing the common area landscaping. It's, is there a park? Is there a pool? Are there events that are happening? Do the residents want a fall festival? And so that's where, if a manager is not worrying about putting together the board packet or, the cumbersome hours that you would spend on a budget, and can really focus on the lifestyle and those services that are being delivered to the residents to make it more enjoyable, to make it to where they're having fun in the community. And that's where I think the more we're able to promote that environment, that's where we'll get more of the positive stories and the happy faces in order to say, communities aren't so bad.
Well, you tapped on something a second ago, if I may, Ben. Little side conversation. How many people hold actual community-wide events in your community? And now, if you don't mind looking around, see how many hands are up. For those of you thank you for those of you who are doing it. For those of you who are not, it's invaluable. When I was on your side of the stage, on the management side, actively, we were doing events in small communities, large communities. There would be blackouts, random storm-related issues, where we would go in and throw a party in their community room just for people, because it's great public relations. You're showing a sense of community. There's absolutely nothing wrong with creating that community picnic, creating that Halloween party, the holiday party, whatever the cases may be. because that's what changes the perception of our industry. So recreating, if you will, that sense of community in every single community, it changes the perception of our industry in a public perspective.
I'm glad you kind of varied those percentages, Ben, because I was thinking 80%. I don't know that AI can do 80% of what a manager does, honestly. I think that it can do some things and can do them well. And I think it's going to return our managers in our industry back to what I think they all believe their mission is, and that is to deal directly with people and to be problem solvers and to creatively think, which is not something I think AI can do terribly well. I think when you look at, for example, a lift station goes down in the middle of the night, AI is not going to fix that. A manager is going to do that. There's damage to your condo building. AI is probably not going to do that very well, if at all, but a manager will. There are things, for example, I have I don't know if this is a great example or not. I'm going to give it anyways.
I like it. Take a risk. Let's go.
I'm going to go for it, Ben. I purchased this. I don't know why I did this, but I just recommend you don't do it. Amazon Prime. I love working. I probably shop too much on that site, and I ordered a live plant to be delivered to my house. I don't know why I did that, but I did because
that was one of those late night purchases.
Yeah, that's a weird late night purchase if that's what that is. And so I did, and the thing came in, and it was like this little twig, and it was dead. It didn't survive the delivery process. It was awful. And so I was like, well, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to put this thing in the ground and see if we can water it, bring it back to life or whatever. That did not work. It was dead. So I thought, well, I'm going to go to Prime, have a great success in dealing with returns. I think all of you probably have done this. I think they've got a pretty good return system if you're dealing primarily with AI. It's pretty good. So I went there and typed in it's like, do you have a return? Went to the AI assistant. Yes, and it gave you a drop-down menu, and it gives you specific things that it wants to, like problems that it thinks that you have that it wants to solve for you. And I kept saying, and the last option was, it's something else. So I clicked on that because it wasn't the thing, because I can't return. It wasn't a return. It was dead. It was like a plant. I couldn't put it back in the box. It was packed terribly. So I kept hitting it. Finally, it got to a point, I'm like, I got to find a customer service representative, because the AI was not recognizing this was not a feasible situation where I could just put a twig with dirt in a package and return it back. And by the way, it wasn't really returnable. I mean, I didn't know there was a return policy. I didn't make sure they had a return policy for plants. So I ended up getting on a phone call with a customer service representative, and it was the person who was able to resolve the problem, because they realized, oh, this is not a flashlight or something like that. This is an actual different problem. Welcome to the world of community association managers. The problems that they encounter are not going to be able to fall into neat little categories and maybe AI can do that. And I think there's a very valid role for that. But honestly, I think that managers play a real important role in being that customer service representative that you were talking about, and figuring out, okay, you have a unique problem. Let's figure this out and let's get it resolved and keep it from escalating to a level where it becomes a much bigger problem. This is what I deal with every day. So yeah, that was my story.
Well, AI will streamline that process, however. Like, that manager will know quicker because of AI.
Sure will.
Those contacts, the process with the insurance, process with the industry partners, the vendors, all that's AI will streamline all that. But you're right, managers are the one who's actually going to be on site resolving that actual problem.
Yep.
I think you're exactly right. And when I say on the extreme end that, and I do think this, when I say on the extreme end that AI can replace or can augment 80% of the activity, I don't think it's 80% of the value.
Yeah.
I think the problem right now is that community managers and management companies are spending 80% of their time on stuff that only ends up being 10 or 20% of the value, which is all the back office stuff, chasing down tasks, doing things. And I think 80% of the value plus is connection and community and a real relationship, but we just don't have time for that. Like, how often are we stuck, in front of our computer or catching up on emails or returning phone calls or chasing things down, rather than actually asking, how are you and what can we do to build a better community? So I think that's the optimistic version of this. I think that's hopefully where we're going.
Well, and I think we're going to see more soft skill training that's needed in order to support that. So instead of training on this is how you build a budget, let's train on customer service skills. I mean, we were joking before we came out about, a lot of people don't know how to do a handshake anymore. And you can't, it's kind of like...
These kids rocked it.
These kids do.
If you have not
These
met
young men do.
them, they rocked it.
But how are we training managers to make sure that they have the ability to give that connection and look people in the eye and have that confidence to deliver the message? And so, as AI addresses the task function, making sure the soft skills are there for the service function, that's going to continue.
I'll pose a challenge to everyone here, and then a question to the three of you. And I think the challenge is knowing that so much is going to be possible to either automate or delegate to AI and things like that, is as you're setting goals to be able to do those things of, hey, we want AI to resolve calls or answer emails or do those things, I think it's equally important to set a goal of what else can we deliver? What else can we deliver that we weren't delivering before, that we didn't have time to do before? And I think if you're setting goals on a quarterly basis or annual or whatever it is, having both of those things, not just trying to strive for more efficiency, but also asking, as we execute on this efficiency goal, what can we deliver that we've never had time to do before, or we wish we could do, or our communities would really value? So that's my challenge. And then Melissa, to your point, for the three of you, what do you think is that kind of changing paradigm of what we should be hiring for, or what type of training we should be leaning into to prepare for that future?
That's a tough one.
That's a big question.
That's a big question. I just go back to, I don't know how many years ago it was now, but we had the behavioral-based interview training. And it was interesting as, a group going through that discussion, how many people were just like, well, no, I just want to know if they're going to show up to work. Okay, well, they can show up to work and be the worst person to have at the front desk, and you're like, I need you to go home. You're not cutting it. And so being able to have a conversation when you're looking at talent to say, what are your characteristics? What are your skill sets? What are your hopes and goals and dreams and aspirations, to really make sure that that person has the desire to come in and lead a community. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in the, hey, we need someone. We needed them yesterday to fill a spot that's been open.
Warm body.
A warm body. You jump in, drink from the fire hose, and we wonder why they get frustrated and leave. And so if we can be more mindful up front, bring those people in, set them up for success, but knowing that they have that passion inside of them and can deliver what we're looking for.
I agree. I think if we're being real, we management companies, we're in a position where we have to have people to do certain things. And therefore, we're stuck because how many people just said, that you intentionally got into the industry. So I think one of the first things you should be hiring for is the culture of your office. And our industry, you can train somebody in almost everything that we do, but you can't train them in the soft skills of how do you handle different personalities at the same time. That's something that people have or they don't. And I think if we can train anybody, anything from a technical perspective, AI, how boilers operate, all these things is really not that difficult to train somebody on. But you can't train them to be able to do, 12 things at the same time. And, the person that, we have to be into the communities. I mentioned the community parties and community events for a reason, because you have thousands of homeowners across your portfolio. How do you walk over and have those conversations with each one of them on a day-to-day basis? You can't. It's virtually almost impossible. But you can if you hold events, if you are in their community on a regular basis. That's really where that soft skills come into play. But first hire for your culture in your office, because that's an absolute key.
I think just a funny story. I had a manager one time who told me, they're like, I don't like talking to people. How are you in this role? And so when you do come across those situations where they don't have that soft skill component, okay, great, maybe you should be in an admin role behind the scenes where you're not answering the phone or talking to anybody. I do think we have some very skilled team members out there that are in such a phenomenal way a support to what we do, but making sure that we're putting the right person in that front-facing manager role.
Yeah, we talk about all the time on our team. There's always two things about an individual and a role. Is it the right person? And that to me is not about the job specifically. It's the right culture, the right core values. Like, do we want this person on our team? And then in the right seat. And that's a very different thing sometimes. That person who doesn't like talking to people probably isn't in the right seat.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, it's also creating that pipeline, and we talked about earlier from an education standpoint. CACM is fortunate. Our certifications are now accepted in almost two community colleges in California. Cal State Monterey is putting together a degree program based off of our certifications. So we recognize the industry needs help. We recognize the industry needs that pipeline. Encourage your teams to go out and get an education. Learn. It may not be in community management, but learn financial. Create that financial acumen. All those skills that you can get, not necessarily specific to our industry, will be transitioned into our industry.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'd love to open it up to some live questions. So we're going to do a couple things because we've got both the live streaming audience that will pull some in, and we've got two mics up here. And so if you're in the room, I'd encourage you to walk on up, step up to a mic, and then I'll call on you at the mic, and then our team in the back will
Not
feed
you,
in
Steve.
the live stream questions.
Sorry, Steve. There's not enough time.
No, anybody, come on up to the mic. I see we have some people. Stephen, go ahead.
I had two things. Melissa, talk about the mentoring program. I think that's an important piece because I was telling her this morning we're losing our executives that are retiring, and they are the ones that are educated to teach our younger people. We need to keep that going. And then for all of you, I went to a program called Leadership Coachella Valley, which taught me how to work in communities outside of HOAs. And one of the things they took us to was a media field where we went to TV stations and newspapers and saw how they produce things. And my question to them was, why is all the news always so negative? And their answer was, because that's what makes money. And I said, change it. And they said, no, it's never going to change. Yep. Negative stuff makes money. So how are we going to turn that around in our communities? That's the real big thing. And HOAI is going to do that. You know that, Ben.
I'll take it. I didn't pay Stephen to say that.
Steve, part of what he referenced is CAI launched a mentorship program this year in an effort to recognize that we do have a lot of professionals who have said we're retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. Do we have people in the pipeline to step in and fill those roles? And some people can say yes. Other people are like, nope, I have no idea what's going to happen in 5 years when I leave. And so making sure, giving people the opportunity to connect with someone who has experience they can bounce ideas off of, talk through different problems, in a way to hopefully get more people to stay, go past the 3-year mark of surviving this industry, and being successful.
Are you a management company?
I retired 4 years ago from a management company. New leadership is here, and the company president's in the room somewhere.
Okay. I think that a big answer to that, in my experience as an advocate, and is really being very proactive in your communication with your lawmakers. And my audience primarily are the people who regulate us, the people who pass these laws, who are often under that impression that you spoke of, which is a very negative one, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. But I will tell you that when it comes to, if you're a management company in the room and you are not a member of a trade group, if you're in Florida, you need to be a member of a trade group, of an association of like-minded executives who think like you, who are interested in elevating best practices, who can also be your voice for you and with you to your lawmakers. The biggest thing that we've seen in Florida, and I think it's also become a bit of a divergence, unfortunately, but we have seen a very favorable reaction to the management professionals in Florida, in that we don't just talk to the lawmakers, we interview them as candidates before they're elected. We host candidate interviews. We let them know those good stories and those things that we're doing that are moving the needle, that are helpful to the millions of people that we represent. We represent almost 30% of Florida's population living in communities that are managed by the companies that I represent. We want to tell our story, so we talk about that with our lawmakers, and we do everything that we can to engage them. We endorse them for election, because in Florida, our leadership changes every 2 years. So it's reset. You're in a constant state of resetting that conversation, but it never stops. You have got to continue to elevate that. When it comes to the community associations, while the management companies in Florida are pretty well thought of, I think that we're still working on that. The community associations themselves are not. And I don't know why that is, but I can tell you that is because in large part they only hear about the negative stories. I think we should talk more about that. I don't know, that's a media issue. They do tend to cover just the things that tend to get eyeballs on the screen or on the page. But I think that what we try to do is offer solutions to these problems. And where we see in Florida the significant problems that's driving the negative perception are the bad actors that are coming out of self-managed communities who do not have a licensed professional management company in helping them navigate this, but also being a form of accountability for some of these things that should be and can be resolved if there was one in place. We see almost every bad actor incident coming from a self-managed community because they either don't want accountability or they want to try to navigate it on their own, and that leads to bad things happening, and that leads to the stories, which in the worst case scenarios, it leads to a bill that we have to fight off at the state level.
I will just say there are some phenomenal self-managed communities as well. South Carolina has quite a few, so there are managers out there who have taken their profession very seriously and are doing, a great job managing those communities. So not to, say all self-managed communities are bad. There are some phenomenal ones out there.
Here, I want to get to a couple more questions, and I know we've got a couple that have come through on the live stream, so we'll do another one in the room and then encourage everyone to keep submitting those questions live stream as well. No, go ahead on this side. I think, we'll go back and forth. Go ahead.
Question for the panel as a whole. So from California all the way over to the Carolinas and down to Florida, we've talked a lot about being reactive to what's happening. What are some things that your individual organizations are looking at to maybe pro-legislation, helping the industry there? Thank you.
Well, for California, we're actively, I'm in Sacramento. Matter of fact, I'm going to Sacramento next week. I'm in Sacramento on a constant basis, meeting with our lobbyists. And Mark said it earlier, and I obviously fully agree that if you're not in a trade association, you should be. However, when it comes to the legislature, Mark, Melissa, we can all stand in front of the legislature and tout our industry and argue our bills in support or in opposition of, but it comes from you. If you want to change legislation from an active perspective, engage. Engage with me if you're in California, engage with Mark if you're in Florida, engage with Melissa if you're on a national basis or whatever. You need to be able to, the legislatures want to hear from their constituents. I represent all of California. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of people that we represent. But that doesn't change when I'm in front of a legislator that, are you in my district? Well, no, but I have many, I don't want to hear from you. I want to hear from my constituents. So we are advocating to get out, and when we see opposition to a bill or support of a bill, we will reach out to our individual executives, our individual managers and management companies and say, we need to hear from you. Your legislator in your district needs to hear from you. This is what you say. I mean, this is a draft of what you can do. This is where you find who your district representative is, but communicate this to them. That's the best way that legislation will get changed. If you can get the homeowners to do it, 100%, especially from a board.
And CAI has a similar communication campaign. We have legislative action committees throughout the United States to try and be proactive with that. And they are monitoring what's happening in each state. And if a bill comes up that is completely against, community associations, they're going to send out an alert to members that are in that state to say, literally you can click a button and it'll automatically send an email on your behalf, just to make sure to say, no, this is bad. Don't listen to that one person who's complaining. There's hundreds and thousands of us that are happy and enjoying our community. And so making sure you're aware, your team members are aware, and that they're sharing that with the owners in the community. I've had so many owners say, well, I didn't even know there were legislative efforts in the state. And so I think that's a disservice that we're doing if we're not also communicating that to the residents, because they can help us achieve the goals.
And a practical way to do that too is, and Josh, I'm going to get to your question, but I think that one of the things I wanted to mention too is it's not just about the management profession. It can't just be us doing it either. We need community associations. If you are one of those self-managed communities, and I hope that many more would take a different approach, because we're in Florida. Our experience has not been that of South Carolina, unfortunately. But if it is not enough to complain and to gripe. If you have a problem, find out who your lawmakers are and bring them to your monthly meetings. Bring them to your annual meetings and let them know how you feel. We are doing that with the thousands of associations we manage. We are doing that as part of what we try to do in our outreach. But if you're a community association, don't wait on your management company to do it for you if you have one. Do it. Call them. Know who they are. Management companies. If you're in another state, you're not a member of a trade association, find out who your lawmakers are and go see them.
Engage.
Invite them to your office. Give them a back of the house tour. Let them know that you are, in fact, a business. You are not just an extension of your homeowners association. You are a for-profit business that if you are not profitable, if you are not competitive, if you are not successful, you cannot provide the contractual duties and obligations to your board and to your owners that you're supposed to. So let them know of those challenges if you're a management company. We do that every day in CEMC. We have monthly meetings. We have, of course, we'll be embarking on candidate interviews soon in the 2026 election. We're going to do that. And we lean into it. We're proud of that, and we have seen the return on that investment in the form of lawmakers now who have come to our rescue. We are now the first phone call that a governor's office person will make, or the House Speaker or the Senate President will make, when something happens that they may not understand, or if it's a community association issue, we're the call they make. Let that also be true of each and every one of you. Get to know your lawmakers, because they really want to know you, and it's on you to do that. Josh, about your question about what the in Florida, we are not just complaining again. We come to the table with some solutions, and again, we do not want the legislature to solve this problem for us, because I think what we're going to see is when government decides they're going to solve their problem for you, they're going to do exactly that. And it's not going to be to your benefit. It's going to be to your detriment, I think, more often than not. So we have come to the table with a bill in Florida that will require communities of a certain size to have a management company, so that they have that accountability and they have that assistance, that professional standard in place to ensure that they are doing everything they can to be of service to their owners in the most practical and efficient and effective way. So we're coming to the table with a bill like that. We want to go on offense and be more proactive, not reactive. Sometimes you don't have that luxury. You have to be reactive, because people have grand ideas of what they think community associations ought to be, so you have to react to that. But that's an example in Florida of what we're doing, and I'm sure other states are doing things like that as well.
I want to get to a couple more questions. We have a few here, and acknowledge in kind of the live stream as well in the comments that we're seeing a bunch of agreement, and kind of everyone is also collectively saying 100%. If you're not involved in a trade organization or something, like, come together and try to do something and encourage individuals to do that and bring in legislators to communities. And I'll just give my perspective, and I'm not nearly as close to this as you guys are, but not to get political, I'm generally a pretty free markets kind of guy. Less regulation, less legislation is good. But I do think it is an interesting opportunity to think, could there be some sort of simplified national kind of framework that makes sense, rather than this patchwork of sometimes overly restrictive stuff that we have to keep trying to individually peel back. And I think that's especially important as this industry becomes more and more connected nationally. The more different we are as individual states, it's harder and harder to go across the border, even just a few miles, from Wilmington to Myrtle Beach, or
Yep.
or whatever the example is. So I think that's an interesting opportunity for all of us over the next 10 years to go from a hyper-local, which community is the most hyper-local thing, to state level,
Sure.
to thinking nationally about what our industry is.
And I
Go
would
over-
just real quick add, on CAA's website on the advocacy page, you can track what's happening in all the states from a legislative perspective. So if you're really bored late at night and you're wondering, hey, what's happening in Florida or California or Nevada, just go on and see. It does give some perspective sometimes to go, okay, it's not so bad where I live. Like, we have normal people.
See, the problem is Mark should be doing that rather than ordering plants, but that's his day job. He doesn't need to be doing that at night too. Let's go over here for our next question.
So Tom hit on something that immediately made me jump up here and want to ask a question. So you mentioned that there's actually going to be universities in California that are going to give an opportunity for a 4-year education for community management, which is fantastic. How do we replicate that across the country? You being in Florida, how do we get like University of Florida involved to have that kind of program? At a national level, how do we get that across to at least 1 or 2 universities per state so we can have these educated community managers who are 4 years in, 8 semesters in, who are ready to tackle the industry, internships for the summer, doing what they need to do for their professional career moving forward? How do we get that moving forward?
And from a high level, we need advocates. We need people who are willing to go to those colleges and say, I will help teach this course. And in some cases, it's 1 or 2 courses in the hospitality segment of the degree. And so knowing who is willing to put in the time and effort is the first step of it. And there's some models out there that can be replicated, and there's resources available for that, but we need that champion in that local area to say, I will lead the charge on this.
I totally agree with this, and we haven't done this for community management, but in our local market where our headquarters is in Wilmington, North Carolina, there's two colleges. One is a community college, Cape Fear Community College, and another is the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. And both of those universities over the past few years, we've deeply engaged with to get specific courses in curriculum for specific degrees and advocate for new programs to kind of be offered. And both of those institutions have been really receptive, and we've hired a ton of people from them. So I think especially in areas where there's great concentrations of hiring and community management companies, you can really have a big impact through just a few conversations with a local college or university.
And to answer the question specifically, if you don't mind, it's not a 4-year degree program. It's a certification program. It's a degreed certification program at Cal State Monterey, offered in the spring, but it's not a 4-year program. However, to achieve that degree, do the business administration, get your master's. All of those things apply to our industry. The Cal State and the community colleges that are looking to or are implementing our certification courses are very specific to the industry. However, the industry is very broad. So if you're going to be looking at colleges or education, make it a broad view, because while our certifications are very specific to the industry, again, we take people from other industries. We take people from financial industry. We take people from the hospitality industry. I mean, that all kinds of industries can merge into our industry. Right. But the certification, I just wanted to qualify, the certification program is not an actual 4-year degree. It is a degree, I think it's 4 units. It's a degreed course specific to the certification of our industry.
Our goal can be a 4-year degree.
Our goal is most definitely a 4-year degree, right? Unquestionably, because I think we need to create that pipeline.
We're getting close on time. We've got time for a couple questions left. Let's go here, and we'll kind of rapid fire through these. Go ahead.
One item I'd like the panel to comment on that we're seeing a lot happening is an increase in off-site owners and renters, and that is such a challenge to building community because they're really at odds with each other. The off-site owners don't necessarily care about what's happening in the community. They're just looking to have an investment that provides for them.
I think terminology is key in an association, and so when you constantly refer to people, well, you're a renter, like only renters instead of residents. And so, making it more thoughtful and inclusive of, we want residents to participate. There might be some things that, yes, owners need to do, but I think we need to make sure that residents feel a part of it and minimize that distinction between the two. There are some tenants, renters who are better caregivers for the property, if you will, than an owner would ever be. And so recognizing that and just giving them the same information and the tips and tricks to living to the community, and so they feel a part of it.
I want to agree quickly with that, and I love, my team hears this all the time, words really matter.
Absolutely.
Words have a lot of meaning, and it really sets kind of the standard for how you're going to approach a conversation. So I think on that topic, I think that words like homeowner and tenant are accurate, good back office words, because you need to treat those people differently and do different things for them. But if you're out doing things like building community and having an event, like everyone's a resident. We're all there to live in this community and be part of this community.
Well, that's just it. They're a resident. So many times I've seen that to the comment, so many times that it's, well, you're a tenant, I can't really help you. You have to go to your homeowner. All right. Well, while there are certain real responsibilities to be able to separate the two, from a resident perspective, that's what they are. They are residents of the community. Therefore, engage with them, allow them to be a part of the community, and they will start to treat the community like an owner.
Yep.
Good. Maybe one more question, and I think we'll have to wrap. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Kelly Hawkins with KRJ in Houston. Thank you all. Conversation is timely and overdue, so I appreciate this. Just a couple of things. In one area on this note of threat, I think there is an element we've left out in the discussion about why the industry has, negative connotations to it. I spent 20 years in corporate America. I guess I'm a newcomer to the industry, 9 years, acquired a company, and I came in from a $3 billion company into an industry that, from my perception, is totally unprofessional. Okay, but that was my image, right? And something we haven't talked about is the management companies. I think we've done this to ourselves, okay? And that nobody in this room, okay? Everybody.
Right.
Okay?
It's everyone who's not here.
It's everybody that's not here, but I was just taking some notes, but it's the perception, the reason we hear these owners and associations so anti-HOA is because of their experience with us. Okay, with management companies who churn managers, I cannot tell you how many prospects I speak to. We've had 3 to 4 managers this year, okay? The manager didn't know what they're doing. They're undertrained, they're underpaid, they've got too many, in their portfolio. The deceptive billing that exists in this industry is absurd, okay? And what I'm talking about, it's a trick. Too many management companies, not in here, they charge a low management fee. And so they get these associations in and they trick them because, these are volunteer board members. They don't all necessarily look at their financials that closely. Well, there's another line that's administrative or ancillary fees, which often is more than the management fee. So it's a trick, and it's nasty. And it's given us a bad image. Charge your management fee, okay? Stop doing on a per lot basis. This is absurd. Companies are focused on profits. I'm in the business to make a profit. We pay our people well, but we do it, with respect, and we won't take any business. We're a quality company. We're not. I'll leave the name out. Offshoring. This notion of offshoring, okay, you want to send your accounting offshore? Folks, real estate, I spent 20 years at Stewart Title. Real estate is a local business. My customers in Houston don't want to call Dallas or Austin or perhaps the Philippines to get support. They want to talk to somebody local. We're in the people business, and let's go to the people side for just a moment on the managers. They're underpaid, unprofessional, and somebody said it earlier. All the comments you guys are saying are right on. I applaud you. And we got to talk the other day, and I'm going to catch up more with you. But in our company, we hire and we unhire based on culture. Okay, that's it. Nothing else. You said it. You can train people to do a skill if they have, a capability, but you can't train people how to love people. Thank you.
Where are you from? What state are you from?
Houston, Texas.
Yeah. You're here?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I could just, one piece,
go ahead.
yeah, one piece of what you said about management companies doing it to themselves. One aspect of that is, when you do have high manager turnover, really looking at the root cause.
Yeah.
Is it the association? Is it the board? And I think as leaders of companies to be able to step in and say, hey board, you're out of line. Sorry, we're firing you.
Please do that.
Yeah. And if managers knew that that was on the table, they would feel so much more supported in continuing to stand up for themselves. And so I think that's just one piece of what you referenced that we all need to make sure, don't let a board go rogue. Call them out, and if they continue to act like certain words I won't say, then double their fee. Say, you know what, if you can't get your act together, we're gonna charge you double,
In
triple.
2017, when I acquired the company, we had 180 associations. I fired 100 of them, okay? We're down to 83. And not all of them were bad. Some of them just didn't fit. But I have fired more. I tell our clients, my employee is my first client. And if you don't respect us, go somewhere else. Okay, I just fired one 3 weeks ago, a $4,000 account. A month account. Get out of here. I don't want your money.
I want to make one quick comment too, and then we can close with a couple rapid fire questions to stay on schedule. But one thing that I really liked, Kelly, that you said was the transparency in charging the fee that you should be charging, not trying to find a way to go get it. I think more than ever now, you have a lot of the tools where you can really show where this is all going. I think that it's an opportunity to differentiate from your competition through increased transparency of this is what we're charging and why, and here's everything you're getting, and here's how we're giving them really good visibility to that. So I think it's a great opportunity. Too often, and we see a lot of budgets. Too often we're seeing folks pay more for trash collection than they are for community management, which is crazy to me. So I think that we can evolve that.
I think to answer to your issue on the fee issue, I think it's valid. I'd also think that it's important to support laws that increase transparency and reforms and disclosure, so that owners are aware of what is being charged. A lot of times owners are not aware, and they get really ticked off when they find out something's been done that should have been disclosed and wasn't. In Florida, we have supported a number of those transparency and disclosure reforms. So I think that's a big piece of it. I think if owners are aware of what is being charged and for what, which we are in Florida required to disclose, and not only in our contracts but in the documents that we work under. Those are some new recent reforms in Florida that are beginning to take shape. I think that are going to enable more of that knowledge to take place. The other thing I wanted to mention too that we haven't talked about, and I will conclude with this, is that it's maybe an association is right on this. Is a big part of why I think so much of what is negative about associations is maybe that you have an association that's right on the rule but not reasonable on the enforcement. And what a management company can do, just a few years ago we cited on this, we were on the side, and we pride ourselves on trying to be as reasonable as we can. There was an association that had decided to issue a citation to a law enforcement officer and his wife for parking their vehicle in their driveway because it was a commercial vehicle in violation of their bylaws. I thought that was interesting, and of course, needless to say, it escalated into a news story that then led to a bill being filed. We sided with the bill that said you can park your law enforcement vehicle in your driveway. Why on earth would you not want that?
That just feels like walking across the street to get your you-know-what kicked, trying to cite them for that.
But that's a great example of why HOAs are seeing. So we do our part as a management company to do that, to stand up and to say, wait a second, that isn't right. That's not reasonable. Let's not do that. And sometimes we don't win that battle. Look, we at the end of the day work at the direction of the boards under a contract that tells us this is what you have to do. But it doesn't absolve us of our responsibility either to stand up and to say, wait a second, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
That's a really good point, because our management companies are professionals. This is a profession. This is not a job. So going back to the charge what you as a management company, what is your clients paying for? Time. Well, okay, factor all of the time in and charge accordingly that fits your respective company. But at the same time, as it was well said, terminate if it's necessary, because you cannot, just like your office culture, if you have a staff member that is causing really damage in your office, you're going to need to make a change. It's the same thing with your clients. If that manager is dealing with a troubled client and you're not taking care of that manager and working with that client to either fix the problems or terminate the client, it's going to affect clients down the line.
Yep.
So with all this discussion, it feels like our answer is use common sense and raise your management fees. Like, I'm on board.
And have a management company.
Then have a management company. We're going to wrap the panel there. I'm going to stick around and kind of close this out. But as we do, thank you for everyone who joined the live stream. And please thank our panelists with us, Tom, Melissa,